Welcome back, all you good people of YouTube. It's been a weird weather week situation. I know it's been hot, hot, hot. I know everybody around the country is getting hot, hot, hot. But today it was storms, which kind of cooled it off. But I mean, I couldn't get outside and do any shooting or make any trick shots today because of the storms. So I thought today I would make a kind of impromptu video of how I make my horseshoe slingshots, because it has become a popular, I guess the most popular target I make. That's probably the second one I made, so that's just an old one I haven't laying around. But I ordered enough. I've still got a few to give away, but then after that I was like, okay, I need to either stop giving them away or make more. And so I ordered supplies enough to make 20 more, I guess. So I got my little assembly line factory situation going on, and show you my process. And hopefully, I mean, not that you want to learn how to make specifically a horseshoe target, but maybe you'll learn tips and tricks along the way of just overall efficiency, or you know, a new tool that I'm using that you didn't know about, or something you can glean from this video. But yeah, so let me take something to drink, because I had to turn I don't have an air conditioner in my shop, so it is still, even though it rained, it's still probably 85 degrees in here, and I had to turn the fan off just so you can hear me. So this might be a weird video to watch, because it's going to be me talking, but then also just fast forwarding through a lot of stuff, and you know, we'll see where it goes. But there's nothing planned about this video at all. I just came in the shop. Here it is, 10:30, and I can't sleep, so I figured I'd bring you along. Now, there's nothing fancy about this whole target. The whole design was meant to be a compact, portable, yet durable, easy to set up target. And so it just popped in my mind one day. I've shot spoons for years, and then I'm like, well, a spoon's a cheap target, but how can I make a cheap holder to hold the spoon? And then I had made other projects with horseshoes years ago from just decorative items that people wanted me to make out of horseshoes. So I'm like, I could take that and it would fit right in there, just perfect size-wise. But then I was like, okay, how do you hold that up? So originally, the first one I made for myself, I took 2 horseshoes and welded 2 horseshoes together that way, and then had so it would be, I could show you, but I don't want to go get it out of the yard. So it's, instead of this spike down here, I just had 2 horseshoes welded together. But then I thought, well, you know how much that would cost to ship to somebody? Just because, so then I was like, I have to design something that's flat that I can put in a, you know, a cheaper mail option to mail off to everybody. So that's when I came up with this spike. And then I found the spikes on Amazon that were the right thread. And I was like, well, that's perfect. So I ordered up a few of those. Now, the people I've sent these to, I did not explain. I meant it just to be a spike without the bottom thread. So literally you just jam it into the ground. But everybody is like drilling a hole in wood and screwing it in like a fence post, which is fine. I mean, but that's not how I intended it to work. But if that works for you all, I mean, it works for you all. But so I just used these instead of making my own spikes because they were cheaper and it worked. So it's literally just a 5/16 threaded rod. Each one of them takes 6 hex nuts, and you'll see why it takes 6 here in a minute. A spoon of any kind. I started using the soup spoons because the wider, it looks more like a 40 mil. I forget what it measures exactly when you get it hammered out. They vary from one to one, but it filled up the space a little bit better. So I started using soup spoons instead of the regular spoons. And then, yeah, you just weld that on top of it, and it doesn't take long at all if you have a welder. I know a lot of people don't have a welder, which is understandable, which is probably the main reason that people don't make these themselves. And also, caveat, I am not a welder. I own a welder, but that is not my profession by trade. I learned welding off of YouTube, watching videos similar to this back when Chucky 2009 was making YouTube content about him going to welding school, and he would come home every day and work on a welding project, and I just watched for probably a year and a half, 2 years before I even bought a welder. So if you see me mess up with that, you'll have to forgive me. But again, if you're a beginner, want to get a welder, it's a MIG welder. They're reasonably priced. I think I paid $800 for that years ago. But don't let welding intimidate you if you've never welded before, because especially MIG welding, like Jamie Heineman said on Mythbusters one time, he's like, it's kind of just like a hot glue gun for metal. So once you read the instruction manuals and know how to safely set it up and get your settings right, I mean, it opens a whole new world of making things. Because me growing up, so my grandfather and his brothers were carpenters. His father was a carpenter. My dad decided carpentry was not for him because he did not like working out in the hot heat, which I completely agree with that. But I grew up learning from them how to do more woodworking. So that's where I get, I guess you would say, my skill set of making things. But then nobody in my family knew how to weld. And so I took it upon myself to say, hey, I'm going to learn how to weld. And again, it's opened a whole new world of what you can make, what you can create. That's the project I learned welding on. I made a little go-kart using a Honda motor. It's called a cycle cart, but it's just a glorified go-kart, fancy go-kart for adults. And I need to get that cleaned up and worked on. I've just put that's 10 years ago. So, but that's the project I learned how to weld on, and that was the whole reason I wanted to learn how to weld, was so I could make that. And so that was a nice little journey. Yeah. Okay, so horseshoe targets. All I do is take a threaded rod and I pre-thread on my nuts. These are stainless steel. If you're welding, you don't want to use anything with zinc coating because apparently it puts off some kind of toxic chemical you don't want to breathe. So I started doing, now the welders, if any of the welders are watching, know it takes a specific skill set to weld stainless, but in this case, it's not a structural thing that you have to worry about your welds breaking. I mean, worst case scenario is they crack and you have to re-weld them, or your slingshot target's broken. So I'm not too worried about that. But I do go ahead and thread on 4 nuts at one time. I've already went ahead and done that, so we don't have to sit here all day and do that. Then I don't even measure. I take my Sharpie. I'm sticking this in between. Do you need to get closer? Let's get closer. Okay. Because I don't know what you see because I can't see the back screen. So again, forgive me if this is horrible footage, but this is more of a just hanging out with you all on a Sunday night, getting stuff made. So I stick this on the inside corner, and then I mark in between my threads because that's where I'm going to cut between to get, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can mess it up by a little bit, but then I'm going to cut this on my bandsaw. I need to cut my mark. One of the reasons I pre-threaded all of them, not because I want to cut them all out at one time, but because when I'm cutting, if I don't have a nut on this side to hold and support, when I go to cut, it's going to rip it out of my hands and try to kick when it gets done with the end of the cut. So I'm going to go slow and just push through, slowly rotating away from me as the blade's coming into it, so it kind of creates a cleaner cut. But that's one of the reasons I went ahead and threaded this on, was to act as a support on this side to hold up this end when I'm pushing through the saw. So I'm going to fast forward you through this part. Okay, that wasn't the cleanest of cuts, but it will suffice. Another reason I went ahead and pre-threaded on these on here is because once you do cut it, getting a nut on there, it messes up the threads, so I didn't want to have to deal with that whole situation. So that's just a little trick, is to go ahead and get your nuts threaded on there, because it is hard to thread onto a, see how that end is boogered up. So now this is going to kind of lock in. If I tried to put a nut on that freshly cut thread, it's going to be more problems than it needs to be. If you know anything about welding, if you don't know anything about welding, when it comes to welding, you want your piece to be locked in before you actually weld it. You can do that in a number of ways. One of which is a very popular option, these little magnets to hold things in place while you're doing it. So it's like, in theory, you would put your magnet, put your magnet there to hold your horseshoe, and then you would set this on top, hold this, and then take your welding gun. Whoops. The welder's not turned on right now, so this is fine. And you would sit here and hold this and just weld that corner until you get it tacked, and then come over here and get it tacked. So I did that for a while, and it was so frustrating when you're wearing thick welding gloves and things are moving around and it's hot and you can't see, and things are, you'll go to weld and you'll hit that and then it'll move, and it's just it's a nightmare. So then you're like, okay, well, why don't you just stick it down like this, and you can take a little clamp like this and clamp your piece to the table like this, right? So you can do it that way. It's hard to line up every way you want to line up, but once you get it in there, it's clamped down. Then you take your welding gun, get it tacked, and then you can weld up later. These are fantastic for some options, but then it hit me just like a ton of bricks is, you know, why are you using all these clamps when you can do this little trick that I'm about to show you? And it's why I use 4 nuts instead of 2 nuts. So all I'm doing is making my own clamp in between here out of this piece. So to do that, if you unscrew, as you can see, it gets wider and wider and wider. So I've cut my piece short enough to give me tolerance to fit in between there. But then all I have to do is slowly unscrew this. Sorry, it's hard to do and talk on camera at the same time. But if you unscrew this, it will push itself outward and make its own clamp. See how that works? So in theory, even if you don't have a welder and you want to make this target, I mean, you can do that right there, and I mean, that ain't going anywhere. The only reason I weld it is because I'm sending it out to you all, and I don't want you to, you know, shoot this and then the piece fall off and then you be like, hey, this thing's broken. But, you know, once, I mean, I was just sitting watching TV one time, and I was like, you know what? I don't have to spend all that time worrying about clamps and magnets, especially getting those, all the little metal bits that get stuck to the magnet. You have to keep that cleaned off. And it's just a whole ordeal while you're trying to wear the thick gloves, and it's, yeah. So that's why I usually go an assembly line. I try to make, you know, 4, maybe 8 of them at a time, because these come in a pack of 8. So that's my limiting factor. So while I have 8 of those open, I'll line up 8 of my little horseshoes, and then the next, so I haven't pre-measured. So where's my little area? So the next one, I'll literally set that to the side, come down, stick that there, take my marker, mark that off where I'm going to cut it, and then I'll go back, cut that, and then, like I said, I don't measure, because literally you can be 1/4 of an inch off with that cut and it still work because of the little trick I showed you about making your own clamp. So yeah, that's pretty fun and cool. So then after that, I'll get, like I said, I don't have room. I do 4, and then I'll stack these up, get them out of the way, do 4 more, and then before I turn my welder on, because I don't want to get dressed up when it's 9 degrees out here in a welding outfit and gloves, and you can't see, you can't breathe, and you're just begging for mercy while you're trying to weld. But I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the process without going through the whole assembly line situation, because this video is already going to be long enough as it is. So we got our little thing going on here. Our little horseshoe, it's already there. All we have to do now is weld nut on there. And then we're pretty much almost home, except for some tidying up. Get our spoon flattened out. I'll show you that, but literally take a hammer and flatten it out. But the trick I was going to show you with this, so you could probably get by with just welding 1 nut on the bottom of it and it would probably support it. But since these nuts are so cheap, get it? These nuts. But since they're so cheap, throwing an extra one on there to fill up that little space to give it a little bit more strength while you're doing it. I mean, it's one of those you might as well. But we're back to the, do you clamp this down to hold it when you weld? Do you use the magnet? Again, we're back to the how do we keep this in place where we need it to be. And so the way I do that is I put a nut on the back side, put another horseshoe down so it's the same thickness, so it's all on the same thickness, so I'm not cattywampus one way or another. Because if I don't have the horseshoe, it's going to fall like that. You try to hold this with your finger with a glove while you're welding, it's not fun. You don't want to deal with clamps and magnets for the same reason I mentioned before. So literally, I'll get this, you can do it however you feel comfortable welding. You can weld from this angle, you can weld from this angle, that's preference. But, so I get it lined up and eyeballed, and I don't even mark for keeping it, you know, level. So some people would be OCD and they would put a, get this squared off and get this all lined up. But I just get it close, and then I will take my welder, I will hold the back end so my hand's out of the way, and then pop, pop, get that tacked, pop, pop, get that tacked, and then I will set that off to the side, let it cool so it's, you don't burn your hands. I'll do a whole row of those, and then after I get my whole row, then I'll go back and finish up welding each one. Was there anything else I was going to say about that? I don't think so. But I've got a sacrificial piece of that thread rod in here, because as you can see, it will burn and get gummed up on your threads. And then after it cools, I unscrew this. Then you have to run, we don't have to, I did, run a tap die down through the threads to make sure they're clean from all the slag from the welding. And then I've got, these are thread locking nuts on this with nylon in it. So I'll take these, hold down with my Knipex pliers, which if you do not have any Knipex, these are the Cobras. I highly, 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 can't emphasize it enough, recommend the Knipex. If you need to grab a hold of something, these boys will hold it and not let go unless you want it to let go. So, like I said, I have no affiliation with Knipex. I ordered a pair, and then I ordered more pair, and then I ordered more pair to give out as Christmas presents, and you know how that goes. It's just, so that is, I know they're expensive, but around Christmas time specifically, you can find deals where they're like 30% off in varying sizes. These are the most handy. I think they're 10 inches, so 250 millimeters, which that gets me into another topic I'll get to in a second that I'll have to make a separate video about. But yeah, so highly recommend these if you don't have them. Yes, they're expensive, but what isn't these days? But I will just crank down put that nut, get that locked on there with just enough stick out so that I can repeatedly get that back up in, or you all can repeatedly get that up in there, like so. And so I will demonstrate on this one that's dirty, but so when I ship them, I just partially thread that in there to make sure it doesn't get lost. Yeah, but then that just packs so nice and conveniently. And then when you get it, all you do is pop that out and screw that bad boy up in there till it stops, and you are good to go. So, like I said, simple design. I don't have a patent on this design if anybody wants to make their own. And then the spoon, let me take you to the spoon section over here. So you can use any spoon you want to. I found these on Amazon. They're for 12 of them. They're like $8, so very reasonably priced. Stainless steel. Now, the first ones I bought too thick of a stainless steel, and I was sitting here for, I was wearing myself out trying to get that spoon flat. So then I ordered the more reasonably priced spoons, and they work. They still last, but they work a whole lot better when it comes to flattening. Sure, you can see that. Bought those bad boys off of eBay. That random scrap blocks off of something, but those things are solid. But take a hammer of your choosing and just beat that until it screams for mercy. Let me put my headphones on. I'll fast forward you through this too. And see, it doesn't take many hits to get that. If you get the thick stuff, you'll be sitting there for 5 minutes doing that. But like I said, it doesn't come out perfect. It's somewhere around the 35 millimeter wide mark. And then as a just last hurrah to try to get it flatter, I put this one on top. Any takeaway you get from this video is you can go, or at least you could 10 years ago, you can go on eBay, because the whole if it fits it ships with UPS or USPS. I ended up getting, I think, 5 of these in the same box. These things weigh that's probably 8 pounds right there. Makeshift anvil to beat on. That would be my trick there, is look on eBay and see if you can find a cheap little anvil. So then after that, so I don't put the spoons on until after I get everything welded, painted, cleaned up. Oh yeah, after I weld, use a flap disc and just take off the little burrs and BBs that the welder leaves. So hit that, and then hit that with some Rust-Oleum enamel. I intentionally bought the blue because I like blue, but literally any spray paint will suffice. And then once I get everything made and painted and everything, then I will bend my spoon around here and cut off the excess. To do that, I use these little fellas. So when I first started doing this, I mounted these in a vise and then took a hammer and just smack, 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 smack. And I did that with where'd the green one go? Oh, it fell off. Hold on. Well, where'd it go? I just had it. There it is. But so when I was using hit it with a hammer in the vise, it gave me this squared off shoulder, and it did not, it rotates, but it's just ugly and it's not very elegant. So Adam Savage from Mythbusters had made a video on his tested channel and saying these were one of his favorite tools of the month, I believe, at the time. And what it is it's pliers for jewelry making, for like wire and decorative stuff like that. But you can see they've got different size radius for different size. What am I looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? For different size bends, I guess you would say. So I literally put it on the biggest one and just bend it around. So I get it, I eyeball it. I want to bend around the thinnest part of the spoon so it's not as difficult to bend. And what used to take me 5 minutes per spoon in the vise and come out looking like this ugly square thing back there then becomes, look how nice that curve is it put on it. So now, yeah, these cost like 25 bucks, and I know it's a specialty tool, but it just goes to show you that sometimes specialty tools is what you need to make your life easier. So don't be afraid to spend the money on specialty tools if you're going to use it. So then, once I get that, we're getting there. And then after that, I will take my Knipex pliers, get in there real good, and just as hard as I can crimp that, which leaves me a little bit of a spoon tail. And then I will take my any kind of tool. I've got a Dremel. You can use a cutoff wheel and just cut off this extra part of the spoon. That way there's less weight and it spins freer when you don't have as much weight to deal with. But yeah, that's the general process of how I make the spoon targets. I'm not going to go through the whole project on camera just because I have to set up the welder and all that jazz. But so that's the general gist. Hope you learned something from this video. Oh, I was going to talk about the 250. That reminded me. So I attempted to make a trick shot this past week in honor of America's 250th anniversary. Sadly, I did not make the trick shot work. I have 40 to 50 gigabytes worth of video footage of me attempting to make the trick shot and it just not working, and my general frustration with the whole situation. So I didn't get it posted, but I'm trying to come up with the creative way to take that footage and make a learning opportunity out of it for everybody. But the whole premise of that trick shot was I made a 250 millimeter wide square target. So you got 10-inch target, and I'll put a B-roll of the target and explanation of this. But I took a 10-inch square, 250 millimeter square. I was trying to hit it from 250 feet for America's 250th birthday. And it was just a nightmare of everything was going wrong. I mean, couldn't hear what was going on, couldn't get my bands to cooperate. You know, it was 100 degrees, I was sweating, and I just couldn't make the shot. So, like I said, I'm going to try to turn that into a positive. I just don't know how long it'll take to get that video made. That's why I went ahead and made the quick trick shot of hitting the popper, which again, it's a fun trick shot. I was just trying to grow my attempts in trick shots, and I came up with that one. I was like, well, 250 feet is reasonable. Why can't I hit it? But like I said, there were so many things went wrong. But anyway, we'll get to that later on down the road. Going to go ahead and call this video good. Don't forget to like, comment, share, all that fun stuff. Like I said, I'm not trying to get famous on YouTube. I'm just trying to get out there to the Slingshot community. Hope to meet more of you all through the YouTube situation. Trying to give back what I can. That's why I'm making these, to give away to some of you all. And speaking of giveaways, go back and watch my birthday giveaway coming up, because my birthday is July 22nd. So I'm taking entries up through July 22nd, and then I'm going to do the draw names or do the little spinny thing on the computer or something on the 23rd after that and see who wins those. Anything else I was going to talk about? That's probably it for now. But yeah, I'm going to let you all go so I can turn my fan back on, because I am sweating. I don't know how well you can, yeah. I'm hot. So, I'll let you go. Have a good week. Get out there, shoot something, do a trick shot because they're awesome.
So that's like after, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes worth of work, got 4 of them made. But then you all get a kick out of this. I reached in my pocket, and like I said, it was 90 to 100 degrees all day, and I found that in my pocket. So I guess I'll go put that in the refrigerator and see if I can have that for lunch tomorrow. All right. Have a good one, guys. Bye.